So this is an introduction, and I will try to not move away from the microphone too much, but I may do a little bit of gazing back and forth. So there's sort of an agenda here. We're going to talk about different, we're going to talk about the history, overview, stats about REDCap. Then we're going to cover some different features and use cases. And then we're going to look briefly at a kind of a basic project creation, design, and setup. And if at any point I'm losing this, please feel free to just raise your hand and let me know that I've moved too far. Where should I be? Doesn't seem to be clicking now. Was working until just a moment ago. No. Oh, all right. There it seems to be working. All right. So yes, now it's working again. All right. So here's some history and stats about REDCap. So REDCap was created in 2004 at Vanderbilt University. I believe that it's now formally part of Vanderbilt University Medical Center, which I think just like with Indiana University and IU Health, there's a connection there in terms of the name, but there's also a distinction there. In 2006, the REDCap consortium was officially launched. So originally in 2004, REDCap was developed in-house at Vanderbilt to be by researchers, for researchers there who had these particular needs that they felt an application, a new application would really help with research capture and then storage. But they quickly realized that this was something that other institutions would be interested in and would have a lot of uses for. And so they launched the REDCap consortium and started licensing REDCap to other institutions. So the REDCap Con, so this is an annual REDCap conference that meets in different places. We've actually now started having international REDCap cons as of a few years ago. But it began in 2009. That's also the year that Indiana University and the Indiana CTSI member institutions joined the REDCap consortium. And so I think since around 2010, we've had members of the IU REDCap team going to the REDCap Con, being heavily involved in the REDCap consortium. And just as a note, in 2020, 2021, Indiana University was selected as one of the sites for the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine trial. And they used IU REDCap for a lot of the storage and the workflow for that. All right, so what is REDCap? This is just a sort of a standard language describing REDCap. So it's research electronic data capture. It's a secure web-based software platform designed to support data capture for research studies. And it has these various features, including an audit log, including features for export, including automating export. And this is a slightly different description, but it grew to include the use of surveys. And so that's all within the same application. You're able to collect data through internal data entry, but you're also able to build and distribute surveys in REDCap, and then the data goes immediately into the REDCap database. And there was a reference in Brenda Hudson's talk about IU REDCap not currently being validated for 21 CFR Part 11 studies. That is correct. I did want to qualify that by saying yet. So there are ongoing discussions about making that happen. And so hopefully in the near future, we will have validation for that as REDCap is capable of being validated for 21 CFR Part 11. It's just that IU REDCap itself, this instance, has not gone through those processes. But it is HIPAA certified. Here's some by the numbers stats. So we have 8,236 IU REDCap active users. These numbers are actually maybe a month old now. 21,468 IU REDCap projects, 23,803 journal articles which cite REDCap. And so the numbers at the bottom, these relate to REDCap itself rather than REDCap as a whole worldwide. So some different features and use cases of REDCap. And there's a lot. I was glad that Brenda Hudson covered a few things like the code book, for example, because and a lot of different aspects of surveys, because I'm only going to be able to briefly touch on a few of these features. So MyCap, I put right at the front here. This is a participant-facing mobile application that allows you to distribute different forms. They're not surveys in REDCap terms. They're distributed as tasks, but it's essentially you're taking a data entry form in REDCap and you're able to assign that to different participants in the MyCap mobile application. And so MyCap can be downloaded in an iOS or an Android device. And within that mobile application, you're able to add participants. Participants are able to use a QR code or a hyperlink to be able to join a particular project. And you're then able to assign them particular tasks. So these are the same things as forms or surveys, but you're able to assign them tasks that they can complete within the mobile app. And so everything is handled within the application itself rather than through the browser. So you're able to handle different tasks, but you're also able to communicate back and forth with the participants, again, all within the application. And so it's nice that you're able to have this all in one place. It's easily managed, both their responses, and you can, of course, change the frequency, change the schedules for their tasks, and keep that communication and those responses all together in one place. And the participants don't have to go anywhere else. So unlike with surveys where they're receiving it in the email, they're filling it out in the browser, and maybe they're communicating with you separately through some other medium. In this case, everything is within MyCap. So I put that at the beginning because that's a new feature for us as of just a couple of months ago. And it's in wide use elsewhere, but we haven't had a lot of people and a lot of projects picking up on it yet. So I definitely encourage you to try that out. It is for longitudinal projects, longitudinal studies. It is not, however, compatible with the longitudinal data collection with defined events option in a REDCap project. So that might seem counterintuitive. It's going to look very similar to using repeating instances in terms of what the data looks like, but it can be used in terms of different time points because you're able to schedule when the tasks are completed. So Twilio, so this is Twilio is a third-party service that's integrated with REDCap, and there is a process of setting up a Twilio account because it is a third-party service, but we do support the enabling of Twilio in a REDCap project. And there are costs associated with using this, unlike most of these other features that I'm going to mention today, including MyCap, which are all free and they're part of the built into the REDCap service. Twilio, as a third-party service, does have a fee associated with sending these SMS messages. And at IU REDCap, the Twilio service can be used for sending survey invitations via SMS. So There are other capabilities that Twilio's integration with REDCap has, which some other institutions use. For example, being able to actually initiate the surveys themselves via SMS, where somebody would receive the SMS and it would have some survey questions, this sort of thing, or via phone call. But in fact, we just use the survey invitation feature. So getting data in and out of REDCap. So in terms of data exports, the standard way that you export data from REDCap is through an application in the project called Data Exports, Reports, and Stats. And this is in the form of CSV files, as you would have seen in Brenda's presentation, that they're comma separated value files. They open up in Excel, they're spreadsheet files. That's how you're typically going to take data out. However, REDCap supports exporting in different formats for various statistical analysis packages. So SAS, SPSS, R, and also as an XML, CDISC XML file. So there's several different options available. And then you're also able to report. So you can export all of the data in a given database, but you also have options to export by a particular instrument, a particular form in the REDCap project, and then also to create filterable reports, individualized reports, where you can get a particular subset of the data. So REDCap is not for data analysis per se. It's not going to do most analysis for you, but you are able to get a particular subset of the data that you can then use for analysis. And then again, in terms of importing data into REDCap, you would do that with the data import tool via CSV spreadsheet file. One thing which I will just reference here, or just allude to, is that for anyone who has team members who are programmers, there is also a REDCap API, which I haven't included more discussion of that here, just for reasons of time, but it is possible to programmatically automate importing and exporting data. So that's another way of doing it. So there's various other features, which again, I'm just going to touch on briefly here. And won't even enter into much of a description of them, but I would encourage, if you have any questions about them, to ask questions. So there's alerts and notifications. This is what it sounds like. You're able to automate sending particular notifications to either people who are participants in the project, for example, through surveys, or through different internal project users. So it can be used for all sorts of different things. Branching logic, this is also called skip logic. You saw some of that in Brenda's presentation with surveys. That can be very useful. Data quality, and so this is the data quality application in REDCap, and there are several of these built-in rules which can just be really useful for data quality purposes, for checking some of these different points. And in some of these cases, and with some of these rules, REDCap will actually allow you to fix or update any issues. Logging, there is an audit log for every REDCap project, so that will contain a lot of the data. That will contain a lot of the information about any changes to the data or any data entry in the project. There's multi-language management that allows you to include translations for various forms so that people are able to toggle between different languages. And there is a randomization module in REDCap that's useful for any kind of randomization study, clinical trials, anything like that. So these are the sort of three broad REDCap use cases. So research is what it was originally created for. It's the most common use still, but also it can be used for a wide variety of quality improvement and operational support projects. And this is just a list of a sort of more specific detailing of some of those different types of use cases, things that you could use REDCap for. So I'm going to quickly run through the creation, design, and setup of REDCap projects. Again, I encourage you to take a look at these slides again if you're very new to REDCap. This will guide you through some of it. I've given a few links here, but essentially you can request an IU REDCap account if you are with Indiana University, or if you are with an Indiana CTSI member institution. That includes Purdue, Notre Dame, Eskenazi, Regenstrief, Parkview Health, IU Health. I'm not certain if I'm forgetting somebody. I hope I'm not forgetting somebody. But you can request an IU REDCap account at our homepage. That's redcap.uits.iu.edu. And we encourage you just to get an account if you don't have one already. Definitely, if you're here at REDCap Day, you should go ahead and get an IU REDCap account. Try it out, create some projects, copy some projects. That's what it'll look like at the top of the screen. You can select new project. So in terms of design and setup, I always tell people that are new to REDCap to look to the project setup page. So this is a particular tab that, in fact, when you create the project, it's going to open up onto this project setup tab, and really use that as a checklist for the creation of your project. And even as you're creating it, you can check off the different boxes as you go along. So I've shown you one of the check boxes there where it's been checked complete. That's something you do for yourself, is you can go through and use the project setup page as a checklist. But always feel free to go back and reference that. And if you see that there's some issue or something missing in terms of your project design, you can go back and reference the different sections of the project setup page to see what you might be missing or what you might want to add. So these are some main project settings. Those are the first things that you're going to want to determine for your project. Are you going to use surveys? Are you going to use longitudinal data collection of defined events? And are you going to use this MyCap app? And so next, you can use the online designer or the data dictionary option to design your forms in REDCap. And the online designer is by far the more common way of doing this. And in reality, that's almost certainly what you're going to want to use to design the forms themselves. You can then use the data dictionary for editing. In some cases, it can be helpful for doing some quick editing in a spreadsheet. That's what the data dictionary is. It's building the forms using a CSV spreadsheet file. But the online designer is much more user-friendly. There are quite a few different optional modules and customizations. These are just a few of them, but you'll see that there's really quite a bit to explore. One of the wonderful things about REDCap is that it's very easy entry. It's designed to give you a lot of documentation within the application itself. And so you've got a lot to draw from. The help and FAQ in REDCap is very, very useful. It has a lot in there because it was developed by a team at the REDCap consortium for many institutions. And so unlike some of these FAQs for other applications that are just sort of very high level or general and don't go into much detail, the REDCap help and FAQ actually has a lot in there. But there's a lot that you can do with REDCap in terms of additional customizations, different optional modules that you can add. So you can start fairly easily, but there's a lot that you can grow into and play around with REDCap. User rights and permissions. So this is going to be when you're going to want to add other people to the project, and you're going to want them to have some particular user privileges and not others. You would go to the application for user rights and permissions. And I'm just going to use this opportunity. I don't have too much time, but with a view to education, I just want to mention to everyone, and since this will be recorded, that when you're going to add someone to your REDCap project, single biggest mistake that people make with REDCap in terms of questions that I get, is you want to add the username, not the email address. So I get almost daily, I get questions about this, where somebody's trying to give someone project access. And in fact, you want to do that by adding the person's username rather than their email. And then we really encourage you to test all aspects of the project thoroughly. So run through your entire workflow. If you're using surveys, take the survey several times, as Brenda said, have other people take it. Run through as though you're a data entry person, as though you're any role that might be involved with your project. Make sure to test it all out. REDCap in development mode is very safe. So you're not collecting real data yet. You can basically play around with it, do whatever you'd like with it. If you have some changes at some point that you're worried about making or you're worried about testing out, feel free to make a copy of the project and then use that for some testing. These are a listing of the different field types in REDCap. Again, most of these are pretty self-explanatory and you're probably familiar with them. But again, feel free to ask questions. And surveys in REDCap. Brenda touched on some of this, but essentially there's two different main ways that you can approach distributing surveys in REDCap. You can either use a public survey link, so a URL that you can post anywhere, or you can share with people, as many people as you like. They're able to submit the survey, or you can do targeted survey invitations to particular email addresses if you have a list of emails that's using the participant list. All right, so I think we have just a couple of minutes, but if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them now. And just to say, if you don't get a chance to get your questions answered, not only in this presentation, but anytime today, please always feel free to submit them to redcap@iu.edu, and we will try to follow up with you. And I mention that especially for people in the Zoom chat. So you can put those in anytime, including today. Yes. Thank you. And so the question was, when you're in the user rights and permissions application, why do you need to enter the person's username rather than their email address? And so that's, it's not something to do with logic. It's just the way that REDCap's user rights process works. So when there's the add users, text entry box, that's what you would want to enter is the username. It's the username that would grant them access. The email address just doesn't do that. And
thank you. I've viewed REDCap a number of times, and I've noticed there's a lot of videos on how to do things, but I was just curious if that information is actually written like in a handbook somewhere, because it's sometimes difficult to find information in the videos.
There isn't one sort of overarching handbook of REDCap, but there is not only the help and FAQ that has a lot of details, and that's searchable, but then also there's a lot of just documentation within the application itself. And anyone else? I think that's our time.
No, thank you, Alexander, so much.